The Pochettino USMNT era is off to a rough start, which led some people to ask a few questions, like, was hiring Pochettino a mistake? Or, who would win in a fight, 100 man or a gorilla? Also, we had comments like the one that came out from Bruce Arena, questioning the fact that the US men's national team has hired a foreign coach. Hired Jurgen Klopp, for example. He just doesn't want a foreign coach. That's a problem. That's a big no-no for Bruce Arena. Old people, man. Old people. And listen, whether or not hiring Pochettino was a mistake, it's something we are only going to know for sure after the 2026 World Cup, because that's where he's truly going to be judged. What I do know is that firing the American coach Greg Burhalter was definitely not a mistake. Hello. If you're new here, I'm Filippo, and welcome to Tactical Manager TV. And today we have part 2 of our 2-part interview with Eric Wynalda. In episode 1, we talked about Major League Soccer, and then today we're going to dive into the US men's national team and Mauricio Pochettino. We're going to react to what Bruce Arena had to say at his podcast with Landon Donovan. Actually, it's not his podcast with Landon Donovan. He was the guest. It's Landon Donovan's podcast with Tim Howard. And you know what? Let me know in the comment section, do you think every single national team should not have a foreign coach? Do you think hiring a foreign coach for your national team, regardless of the country, you think it's a mistake? And also understand that whether you like Eric or hate him, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And if you want to watch more of his specific content, go check him out on Goals TV with his show Unleashed. Now make sure to drop a like in this video because I will not be requesting during the interview. So do that right now, please and thank you. Hit the like button. I'm not going to ask for it again. And this episode is brought to you by So Rare, but more on that later. Roll the episode. All right, everyone, part 2. Now we're going to talk about the U.S. men's national team, Eric. We're leaving MLS for a little bit, and it's mainly one topic. We hired another foreign coach. We had Jurgen a few years ago, Jurgen Klinsmann. And after Greg Burhalter crashed out in the Copa America in the group stage, he was fired. And Mauricio Pochettino, a coach from Argentina, was hired with a very good resume in Europe. And then I saw some comments from Bruce Arena, which you obviously know Bruce Arena very well. And this is what he had to say about, he was essentially questioning whether or not a country should have a foreign coach. So I'm going to read this for you, and I want to get your reaction, okay? So he said, if you look at every national team in the world, the coach is usually a domestic coach, said Bruce Arena at the Unfiltered podcast with Landon Donovan and Tim Howard. And then he added on and he said, and I think when you have coaches that don't know our culture, our environment, our players, it's hard. I'm sure our coach is very good. Well, very good. Obviously, he is, right? I mean, we know the guy's resume. But he said coaching international football is different than club football. It's a completely different job. And I think when you're a national team coach, you need to know your environment. You need to know the animals you coach. And we're lacking that. If you're an American coaching the U.S. team, you know the culture. You know the pride and how important it is for the national team. I think when you bring someone from the outside, they don't understand it, especially in our country, because we're so different. My take from this real quick before I get your reaction, I thought it was a load of crap. Really stupid comments from Bruce Arena. No disrespect to Bruce Arena, but a load of crap. What's your take? What are your thoughts?
He's not completely wrong, and I do think there's other factors that are contributing to his opinions. But then again, look who he's talking to. He's talking to Landon and Tim. So,
hey, it's me interrupting myself. So we can put a quick word from the sponsor of this video, So Rare, because, Tactical Manager has to pay his rent. We'll be back in 60 seconds. Do you collect sports cards? Do you play fantasy sports? Yes, no, maybe. If you said yes to any of that, I got something for you. And if you said no, you might still want to stick around. Tactical Manager TV is partnering up with So Rare with a special offer. The link will be in the description. In So Rare, you can collect your own virtual cards of your favorite players. And then you may be asking, why would I want to collect virtual cards? Well, you can line them up on 5-a-side games every single week. And if your players perform in real life, you can win actual money, signed jerseys, game tickets, or even more cards to improve your own club. And you can also get unique experiences like a friend of the channel, Fiago, that got to meet Zinedine Zidane. You know what's also cool? They also have the NBA and Major League Baseball. I'm mainly gonna just stick to soccer, but you do you. What I really like about Sorare before we even partnered with them is that they're unlike other fantasy games where you have to pay per play. In Sorare, you pay to get the players you want permanently as cards, and then you can play multiple times using those same cards, at least until the player retires, win rewards if your players perform in real life. You can also buy undervalued player cards for cheap, then hold, use them in the future when they improve or develop, and then you can even sell that card when its value goes up for better ones. Or just keep the money yourself. And if you use the link in the description of this video, you will get $50 in credit after buying your first 5 cards through auctions or instant buy at any prices. Play with responsibility. All right, enjoy.
Yeah, this is Landon couldn't deal with Jermaine Jones. I mean, he didn't think that Jermaine Jones should have been on our national team because he had all kinds of difficulty dealing with that. I think that if you go through the history of the World Cup, nobody's ever won a World Cup with a foreign coach.
Can I debunk that for a second?
Who did it?
Well, I'll debunk that. So I think that argument that I see it very often. This is why I think it's flawed. And let me explain to you and let me know what you think. Let me see if I can make you think differently about this. See if I can.
I'm not thinking differently. I'm just stating the fact.
No. But the argument they use is that no country has ever won a World Cup with a foreign coach. I think most of the top nations in the world, they have good enough coaches that with their players, that coach can lead them to glory. However, I can give you several examples of underdog stories that were tremendous, led by foreign coaches. South Korea was a German coach in 2002 semifinals.
No,
Gus Hiddink. Sorry, Dutch.
I'm Dutch. We always celebrate this shit.
Dutch. So. And then Greece in 2004, a German coach. They won the Euros. Felipão, a Brazilian coach with Portugal, semifinals in 2006.
The German coach was Otto Rehagel, by the way. It was the most boring.
Otto Rehagel.
1-0, 0-0, 1-0, 0-0, 1-0.
Yeah, but what my point is, Jamaica, the only World Cup they ever played was when they hired a Brazilian coach, René Simões. So when you look in that perspective, you see that nations that are not the top nations, sometimes they have to go to these top nations and say, hey, I need to borrow your coach to get the results done. And it works. In the U.S., we are not World Cup contenders, right? That's not what we are, unfortunately, right now. So we are having to go to other countries like Germany or Argentina and say, hey, can you help us out? That's why when any of these former players, they say, no country has ever won a World Cup with a foreign coach. You're right. It's a fact. You're stating a fact. But I don't think this argument applies to us.
Okay, so if our expectation is not to win the World Cup, then we should be fine with this. Is that...
No, that's not the point. What I'm saying is we don't have the players to win right now. We still have to grow. We still have to develop. And our coaches, unfortunately, are not that good right now.
No, hold on. Here's you'll like this conversation because this involves Brazil. The story of the U.S. versus Brazil is a very unique one. We always looked at, how we played against Brazil as the standard. That would determine whether or not we were getting there or close to there. We lost in the World Cup. Obviously, we lost Tab to a horrific injury. Leonardo and we played against 10, but we still lost. Guys like Romario, Bebeto, Cafu, Dunga. I mean, unbelievable team. Flash forward to the Copa America, we played far better. We weren't scared of them anymore. We lose 1-0. And I think Harks let this guy go in the near post, and we lost on a set piece. Had several chances to score. We eventually beat them when Casey Keller, stood on his head, and Preki scored a wonder goal, and we beat him 1-0. I think it was in front of like 11,000 people. I don't know when that was, but we look at these kind of scenarios, or we used to at least, and we tried to develop our own culture, our own, not just methodology and philosophy and all that crap, but our way of our style of play and who we were representing exactly what we were capable and incapable of doing. To the point of the understanding of what that is supposed to look like, we assumed, I guess we thought, that an American coach would be more in tune to be able to do that. Bruce is very happy and proud of, I guess you should say, what happened in 2002. Still thinks he got cheated by Torsten Frings on the handball. But we ended up getting into a knockout phase, playing against the one team we knew we could beat, Mexico. 2-0. I mean, whatever. It's not like it was that great of an accomplishment. We ended up backing into that deal by losing to Poland 3-1, and just because Portugal screwed up, we actually found ourselves coming in third in the group and still progressing. That won't happen again.
No, we finished second.
No, we did finish second. Okay, so second. I mean, let's look at it this way, and I think this is the important part for us to remember. And if we go back to the '94 World Cup, for example, with Bora Milutinovic, a foreign coach, foreign ideas, put together a pretty good group, we had the ability to win that game against Brazil. We really did. I mean, we had them. It was 0-0, and we had a coach, and I would go on the record as saying, who didn't give a shit if we won that game. He had already looked at his participation in that World Cup as a success story. He delivered. He got us out of the group. There's no disgrace in losing to Brazil. He just was looking for the back door. He already had his parachute on. I'll never forgive him for it. It was a game that we could have played far better. We made some poor choices as far as who started that game, and we didn't go for it when we needed to. So the reason why I'm saying all that is because sometimes the heartstring and the patriotism of the coach on the sidelines who wants to win the game for his country is something that we're not putting enough weight into. Sometimes when we look at the Jurgen Klinsmanns or Pochettino, for example, running down the sidelines and pumping his fist, he's only happy about extended employment, not the fact that the United States of America has won a soccer game. And that is the fundamental difference of why this sometimes works and why this sometimes doesn't. Regardless of whether we think we can win the World Cup or not, it doesn't matter what we think. It matters what we believe.
So let me ask you another question with this here. I'm actually interested in what you have to say. I do agree that there are certain things that have to be told to Pochettino about the uniqueness of US soccer culture. Like, for example, dual nationals. Argentina, Brazil, they rarely recruit. They call you up if they want to. And if you're dual national, you want to play, you play for us. If you don't, go play somewhere else. So you saw the players Brazil has lost. But in the US, we have a very unique situation where some dual nationals, yes, you do have to go talk to them. Like, for example, Ricardo Pepi, raised here in the US, he's American, but he has Mexican heritage, his parents. So maybe you do have to show him some love because he might literally be divided. He's like, I want to play for the US or Mexico. But then if you recruit him and show him, he's like, okay, I'm going with the US since I'm 50-50. It is more of a unique culture. And Pochettino seems to ignore that a little bit because he's like, no, in Argentina, this is how we do it. It's like, it is different. I think that's something that has to come from the federation to show him the differences of what it is to coach
Good luck
the US.
with that. I mean, who at the federation?
Oh, no one. I mean, look, I'm not trying to offend anyone, but the federation is mostly.
What are they going to contribute?
They're clueless. But the overall point is, I don't think having the foreign coach is an issue. Brazil's probably going to get one right now, for example, because their coaches are not good enough at the moment. So they're going to have to rely on a foreign coach. How will that go? We don't know.
Wait, hold on, stop. Argentina just won a World Cup with a guy in his first job. Well, right? Sometimes there's more of a perfect understanding of that cultural aspect of it that is, and letting the guys play as opposed to trying to tell them what to do. I think Carlo is not a bad choice, right? Carlo Ancelotti to go to Brazil to deal with some big egos and to figure out a way to win. Tactics kind of thrown out the window. It's just a matter of picking the right guys, which is half the problem. You know this. Mm-hmm. Brazil every time has 50 guys that could make this team. 50. We don't have 50 guys that can make this team. You got to make selections that are for the best interest of the group. And, a guy like Anthony, for example, who's now ripping it up in Betis, who stunk it up at Manchester United. It's more of a, whether he's talented enough, is he going to make a difference? He might be on the outside, looking in at the end of the day, because there might be so many players that could be have a better function within that team than watching him do a little pirouette. So that's their problem. Our problem is trying to figure out what that team looks like as well.
Just think that
I'm not saying it's the end all be all either. I don't think. I just know I know what the realities are, and history is telling us that if we want to win the thing, this would be ill-advised. But I don't think that's necessarily the truth.
What I'm wondering with Bruce, though, specifically, it's like what you said about the patriotism is obviously important with the national team because that's where you want to fight for that team. That's what you want to see with the team, and we're not seeing that with the players, and it's bothering all of us. What I'm wondering with Bruce Arena's comments is the following: did Greg Burhalter look any more patriotic than Pochettino on the sideline? Because I didn't see it. I mean, if you go Bob Bradley, you could feel it, right?
Yeah.
You could see it. Even Bruce, to be fair, maybe not the second cycle of Bruce where we failed the World Cup, but Bruce Arena also was different. I didn't feel that way with Burhalter. It didn't feel like it. The team felt very
That's
low
his
energy.
personality, though. I mean, Greg has always been a subdued thinker. He's a teammate of mine. I was surprised when he went into the coaching ranks, and I wasn't surprised that his team in Sweden struggled the way they did. But very consistent with that conversation you had with the U.S. Soccer Federation, trying to create an app that was going to change the game. Maybe that's what Greg was all about. He was trying to change the game through an inverted right back who's now going to play as a midfielder. And look, if you announce it, there's no surprise to it. But maybe that was his motivation, that he was too wrapped up in the job of proving that there was a greater good here, that they pretty much forgot about the fundamental connection of and the spirit that a team needs to have to be successful, to be competitive in a World Cup. It's got to come from here, not from here.
Well, why do you think these underdog stories that we mentioned early in the video, why do you think it came with a foreign coach? Why do you think that? Is just the coach is that good?
Well,
Was he
the
able to?
most recent one, well, no, he wasn't. He was a Moroccan coach. The Morocco was a great story. That was a great story. But I think there was a collection of circumstances of being the one team that almost everybody in like the Middle East and Africa and everybody else wanted to see have success, because of where the tournament was located, and everybody had kind of had access, and it became a cool story. But I do think when there is a connection there, and or a belief, or a willingness to understand that we need to be more, we need to be better. And I think South Korea with Gus Hiddink was a great example. Gus has done that with Russia. Okay, he did that with South Korea. He's done that pretty much everywhere he goes because he's a great soccer mind. I'm very honored to say I know the man. I've spent a lot of time with him. I mean, I was in a limousine with him once. We were on our way to the set in Russia, and Roman Abramovich called him directly, and we had to pull over. And he said, "Eric, can you get out of the car? I need to speak with the owner of Chelsea. He needs some advice." And I thought that was brilliant. But look, I think when there's a connection there, and there's a belief that this coach is bringing something new to the table, something missing, a missing piece, a missing component that'll make our team better. We thought it was the street fight aspect of an Argentine street fighter. Man, this guy's not messing around. He's going to somehow instill that belief and all of that fight into our guys. That obviously wasn't the case. These guys didn't receive that message at all. And I think Burhalter's teams were always so busy trying to play the game that they forgot that they were trying to win the game. So that's a different aspect completely. Pochettino's a great coach, man. I like a lot of things that he said. I like the way but he is learning on the job. He certainly is. And there's a lot of things that need to be explained to him after, that are making the entire process a little bit more complicated than I guess he thought it was going to be. Man, I'm so mad at myself for saying process.
Oh, you used the word.
I said it. Process.
The US soccer word.
Process.
The process.
Oh, done with that.
You used the word, the one word we don't use here. But Eric, just to wrap things up here for this episode, my opinion is pretty clear. I don't think foreign coach. Just to make it clear, if it's the same level, I prefer us to have an American coach. If it's the same level,
who would it be then?
Yeah.
There's the other question. I mean, if you're sitting in the room making the decision on this, who is it? I mean, and with Emma Hayes doing as well as she did with the women's national team, who's to say that voice with the English accent isn't better received than what we had prior to that? So I mean, it's a complex problem that demands a complex solution. Whether Pochettino is the answer is yet to be seen. I'm with you, though. I think he can do it.
Do you think he is the answer? Do you think he will solve it by the World Cup and will be fine during it?
Unfortunately, I think it'll get to a point where he will be experiencing something along the lines of what Bora Milutinovic experienced. And what that means is he's going to come up with his own definition of success in this World Cup that's going to get him another job. That's it. And that moment when it comes where the U.S. team can possibly take this thing past a quarterfinal, and it's reliant on his ideas. I just hope he doesn't get too far over his skis and just say, who cares? I've already delivered. I've already proven to the world that I'm a good coach. Look where we are. Look who we beat. Look where we made it this far. This is good enough. I'm out. That's the moment that will be somewhat difficult for some of us to swallow.
But would you consider quarterfinals a success?
See, that's no, I wouldn't. I mean, I didn't put my, blood, sweat, and tears into this fucking thing just to say quarterfinals is a success story in our own country, 30 years removed of my involvement. It'll piss me off.
For you, semifinals is the bare minimum.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, that's a very high bar for this national team. But
why aren't we allowed to have a high bar? If we want to stay in this room, then the ceiling's there for a reason. We need to start thinking about punching.
I do not oppose that mindset. I just have lost some belief on this team lately.
Of course you have. They're not. They already think they're great. We've been over this. They think they're great. Again, nobody is great. You aspire to greatness. It's for others to determine whether what you have done or what your legacy after you are done is greatness, and that all comes through hard work and talent and execution.
Well, and right now they're definitely not great, right? We talked
about.
But
don't ask them. Don't ask them. They're great. I don't think they're great. They're called the golden generation. I think they're more along the lines of the silver spoons. But we'll see when a real game that matters. Let's see who shows up. And then
wooden spoon for now, not even silver. That's
too much. Wooden. Silver has its own implications. Obviously, these guys are being flown around in jets with champagne and trying to figure out what expensive dinner they can have after the game. Not, hey, why did we lose to those guys? It's a different mentality. I think they're finally getting there, though.
I'm going to choose to believe that Pochettino will get this team on track. He'll figure it out and have a great World Cup. I mean, if we can make it to the semifinals, I'll be partying with that. Everyone, thank you very much for watching. Eric, thank you very much for taking the time. And you guys can find Eric at Unleashed with Goals TV. I'll put his link in the description, and you can hear him talk a lot more. Eric, thank you very much.
You got it, buddy.